This capacity to govern policing is not uniformly distributed across the whole country. Potentially, for instance, if you're talking about the provincial government in the Western Cape, possibly in some of the other provinces, you could imagine that they might make do a decent job of it.
The South African Police Service is unable to get a handle on crime levels in South Africa. How do we solve the problems in the SAPS? I posed this question to David Bruce, an independent policing researcher, in a recent episode of my podcast, Solutions with David Ansara. What follows is a short extract from our longer conversation. If you would like to watch the full discussion with David Bruce, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description below. Enjoy.
The fundamental distinctions here is between policing in a democratic society and policing in a more kind of autocratic society. So policing in one of the fundamental ideas around policing in a democratic society is this idea that, policing is concerned with providing safety to ordinary people, potentially to organizations such as businesses and others as well. But it's basically supposed to be responsive to ordinary civilians. And so some people, take the view that policing in a democratic country must be decentralized, it must be localized. But you do have some democratic countries which do have fairly centralized policing systems. But then what you require is a level of management and control at the central level, which is highly sophisticated, which is able to take into account the variations between different parts of the country and so on, and respond to those variations. And so far in the development of policing in South Africa, we haven't been able to put in place a system of leadership of the police and governance of the police, which has that level of sophistication. So you might say there, so that the one that there's potentially broadly two options. We could try and fix up our national governance and leadership system, to strengthen it quite fundamentally, in order to try and ensure that it does govern the police much more effectively, in order to ensure this type of responsive policing. But the other one is, option is that we should consider greater decentralization of control over the police in South Africa.
Right. Well, David, you mentioned Section 205(1) of the Constitution that says the National Police Service must be structured to function in the national, provincial, and where appropriate, local spheres of government. So it does make explicit reference there to a national police service. But then in Section 206(4), which deals with political responsibility, it says a provincial executive is responsible for policing functions. And so I think what's quite interesting there is that there seems to be perhaps a bit of constitutional ambiguity about the roles of the different spheres of government, and a bit of a space there for provinces to be playing a much more active role. Do you think that at the provincial level, at the local level, the various administrations could be taking on more of these policing functions?
I've got a mixed answer to that question, because you see, the one thing that I would like to emphasize is that working in the policing field, the idea that policing should be depoliticized is quite fundamental. There's provisions in the Constitution that emphasize that policing must be non-partisan politically. And as someone who works, in the policing field, I also try to adhere to that principle that I'm not working to advance a particular cause of any single political party. However, what you have in South Africa at the moment is that the contestation around this issue is contestation between essentially the Western Cape provincial government and the government of the city of Cape Town, and the national government. And so it's taken on, this dimension of appearing to be a political power struggle. However, my understanding is that, essentially what you have, what's going on at the moment is that the Western Cape provincial government and the government of the city of Cape Town are trying to take their responsibility to address issues of safety and their engagement with issues of policing much more seriously. And so, they're trying to move forward in addressing the safety and policing issues in their areas of jurisdiction. And this is, bringing them into conflict with the national government. And it's also then, raising this question of, would these governments be better able to address the safety issues in, for instance, the Western Cape or in Cape Town, if there was greater acceptance of the need for some greater devolution of control over policing to one or either of, to either the provincial or local level. Okay, I mean, having said that, you see, so it seems that, for instance, the Western Cape Department of Community Safety has, the provincial government there has made an investment in the Department of Community Safety and in their work, and for instance, has prioritized the issue of significantly reducing levels of crime in the province. And for instance, has invested in, certain types of research around crime reduction, has, for instance, the Constitution refers to these idea of policing needs and priorities. And the Western Cape provincial government is the one province which has most, has strongly invested in these questions to do with trying to assess the policing needs and priorities of people in the Western Cape. So, having said that, what we know also is that governance, at the provincial and municipal level is highly uneven in South Africa. And so this capacity to govern policing is not uniformly distributed across the whole country. Potentially, for instance, if you're talking about the provincial government in the Western Cape, possibly in some of the other provinces, you could imagine that they might make do a decent job of it. But, in many of the provinces, you would have reasonable grounds for, hesitating in so far as you might wish to consider allocating, for instance, policy-making powers in relation to policing to them.
Thanks for watching. Let's hand over to you, our audience. What do you think are the major problems affecting the South African Police Service? How can these be solved? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, if you would like to watch the full discussion with David Bruce, you can do so by clicking here. And I'd also be grateful if you could subscribe to my other channel that's linked over here. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.